Did Justin Bieber die in a car crash? Posts like this started going around the internet in early September. There are so many of them that it's unknown who first created this fake news. Justin seems to be the celebrity who's buried by the tabloids most often of all. It's disgusting even to imagine that someone comes up with those kinds of stories about living people. However, in this video, I've gathered terrifying crashes that indeed killed famous people to show just how horrific those events are and how much they traumatize the loved ones and fans of the deceased. I'm warning you now, as always, viewer discretion is advised. November 30th, 2013, actor Paul Walker, known for playing racer Bryant in the Fast and Furious movies, organized an event to fundraise money for the victims of Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines. The event took place at a racing car salon belonging to Paul and his friend, Roger Rodas. So after the fundraiser was over, they decided to unwind and take a Porsche Carrera GT 2005 for a ride. Like the character he played in Fast and Furious, the actor loved the extreme, as did his friend. They were going at about 160 kilometers per hour when, suddenly, Roger, who was driving, lost control. Both friends were wearing their seatbelt, but even this didn't save them when the car slid off to the roadside and hit a tree and a lamppost on the driver's side. Then the Porsche hit another tree and later caught on fire. The charity event attendees immediately ran to the terrible sounds of screeching tires and the impact. Rodas' small son was among them. It took him a while to realize it was his father's car, but then the boy saw the model of the vehicle and was horrified. He and everyone else understood that Rodas and Paul were beyond help. They died on the spot. An autopsy showed that before burning, Paul had sustained fractures of the left jawbone, collarbone, pelvis, ribs, and spine. The news of the tragedy traveled fast, and within hours, Paul Walker's death shook fans all over the world. The tragedy happened when the actor was participating in the filming of the 7th installment in the Fast and Furious franchise. So his brothers, Cody and Caleb, helped finish the film. They performed some stunts and replaced the late actor in the scenes where possible. At the same time, they had special sensors attached to their bodies to create a virtual likeness of Paul. And since his brothers were very similar to him in appearance, it was much easier to do than with anyone else. In 2015, Meadow, the actor's daughter, sued Porsche, calling the Carrera GT vehicle dangerous. She stated that the car should not be in the streets. However, the investigation showed that the crash had happened due to worn-out tires and high speed, not structural defects of the vehicle. Eventually, 2 years later, Meadow settled her lawsuit with the Porsche company, but didn't disclose the terms of the arrangement. One way or another, it's important to remember that speeding is potentially deadly, no matter your car model. However, celebrities, just like ordinary people, can suffer not only from car crashes, but also from natural disasters. August 2011, Necker Island, British Virgin Islands. Kate Winslet, one of the most famous actresses of her time, was on the island with her children and approximately 20 guests, some of which were the relatives and friends of billionaire Richard Branson. Kate was at the peak of her career, known for her roles in movies like Titanic and The Reader, so the actress's intense filming schedule had completely worn her out, and this trip was her opportunity to spend time with loved ones. Yet, the long-awaited break got cut short in one night. Hurricane Irene swept over the Caribbean, causing stormy weather on the island. At around 4 a.m., the house where the company was staying got hit by lightning, which started a fire. The strong wind only made the situation worse, causing the flames to spread all over the property quickly. Panicked, Kate grabbed her family's passports and her bra. She'd laugh about this later, as the other tenants took with them practical items like headlight flashlights. But at that moment, Kate decided she would never run outside in an attire that seemed so improper to her. Yet the actress wasn't in a rush to leave the burning house. She sent her children outside with the rest of the people and ran to help rescue Richard Branson's 90-year-old mother, Eve. Luckily, everyone managed to evacuate the building and survive. While walking in the ruins the following day, Kate and Richard were shocked when they saw the Bransons' pet tortoise, E.T., slowly climb out of the debris. They couldn't even believe the animal had managed to survive that hell. After the incident, Kate Winslet said the experience had left her with a paranoid fear of fires. The actress started diligently checking electrical appliances and the cooker before sleep to make sure nothing was putting her and her family's lives in danger. I wouldn't call Winslet's experience paranoia. These are more likely essential actions that can help you avoid a fire as well. However, I have another story in which a celebrity had to tackle a natural force that's the opposite of fire. March 1988. Prince Charles and Princess Diana were vacationing at the exclusive ski resort of Cloisters located in the picturesque Swiss Alps. This place attracted famous people with its steep slopes and luxurious facilities. On March 10th, Prince Charles went to ski on the slopes of Hochschnagrat Mountain, rarely open for common use. The royal family was accompanied by a mountain guide and a few friends, one of whom was Major Hugh Lindsay, a professional member of the military, served as a cavalry officer in the British Army, and was appointed as Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth's personal equerry. Yet he was no ordinary part of the royal court. Lindsay often accompanied Prince Charles at various events. Their friendship was strengthened with common interests, such as ski trips, but one of them eventually turned into tragedy. On that day, the forecast warned of foul weather in the Alps, but the company went skiing anyway, ignoring the danger. When the group stopped to rest outside the safe route, a mighty avalanche descended from the top of the mountain and buried them. Prince Charles and a few other participants managed to hide, but Hugh Lindsay did not. He got flung hundreds of meters down the hill. Prince Charles, along with his other friends, dug through the snow with bare hands in an attempt to rescue Hugh until help arrived. However, Lindsay died of the trauma he'd sustained. It was a horrific loss for Prince Charles. He was feeling deep-seated guilt for the death of his friend. This reminds us, yet again, how important it is to pay attention to weather conditions on trips. After the tragedy, the group immediately returned to Great Britain with Lindsay's body. Prince Charles was deeply affected and devastated by the death of his close friend. Later, he admitted to feeling guilt and wrote in a personal letter, "I still find it hard to understand why I survived and he didn't." It's also not the only case where a simple change of plans after a bad weather forecast could have saved a life. January 26, 2020, California. For the nth time, a famous basketball player, Kobe Bryant, hired a helicopter from the Island Express Helicopters Company. The star had been planning to visit a junior basketball match in a town called Thousand Oaks. He was joined aboard by his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna, who was participating in the match, and 8 other people, among whom were the girl's coach and some of her teammates. Kobe's heart was warmed by the thought of spending time with his daughter and supporting her goal of following in her father's footsteps. Kobe Bryant was an NBA legend, a basketball icon. During his career, he made the NBA All-Star team 18 times and was the winner of 5 championships. After ending his sports career, Bryant remained highly active in the media and devoted himself to charity, so his schedule was still incredibly tight. That was why he was increasingly opting for helicopter transportation to save time and be present at games that were important to his daughter. For the flight, Kobe had chosen a really good vehicle, Sikorsky S-76B, one of the most reliable and popular for business class trips. These machines were even used by Queen Elizabeth II and other top officials. However, when talking about safe flights, it's crucial to rely not just on the vehicle, but also on the person steering it. In the morning, the helicopter took to the sky from Orange County despite the bad weather. Some areas in California were foggy, and the flying conditions became compromised. Pilot Zobayan, a professional with many years of experience, was communicating with the dispatchers and decided to stay at a low altitude to dodge the clouds and the fog. However, upon approaching a mountainous terrain near Calabasas, the helicopter tilted to the left and started plummeting. At 9:45, the connection with the pilot was broken. The vehicle crashed on the hills. The impact was so devastating that pieces of the helicopter were scattered dozens of meters from the wreck. The crash scene looked like a crater. All 9 people on board lost their lives. The investigation into this tragic incident went on for months. The National Transportation Safety Board concluded that the main reason for the crash was the pilot's disorientation due to poor visibility. There's a theory that he could have experienced somatographic illusion, a phenomenon where gravitational forces trick the body's senses of orientation in the absence of visual cues. In other words, Zobayan might have mistakenly assumed the helicopter was gaining altitude. The Bryant family filed a lawsuit accusing the helicopter company and the pilot of recklessness. The most painful part of the tragedy for them was the fact that some officers took photos of the crash site where the famous basketball player had died, and then gave the pictures to third parties for vast sums of money. Vanessa Bryant, Kobe's widow, received compensation for psychological damage amounting to $29 million. Even if you're just a passenger on a helicopter, you need to look at the weather forecast before takeoff to have the time to cancel the flight and opt for another means of transportation in case of any problems. As you can see, the famous basketball player ran into trouble even on a reliable, high-quality helicopter. Can you imagine what can happen to those forced to economize on their air transportation? October 20th, 1977. 3 days before, the legendary band Leonard Skinner, whom you definitely know by the song Sweet Home Alabama, had released their 5th album called Street Survivors and was starting a tour in support of the new release. Here's the album cover, by the way. In it, the band members are depicted surrounded by fire strands. It may not seem unusual for a rock band, but some of its fans believed that the picture was an eerie premonition. The band set out on tour on a dingy old Convair CV240 that was already 30 years old. On their way to the first venue in Greenville, South Carolina, for a short second, flames started coming out of the plane's right engine. That scared everyone aboard to death. Although the flight eventually went well, Leonard Skinner played a concert, and their next stop was the town of Baton Rouge in Louisiana. Yet back vocalist Cassie Gaines and guitarist Alan Collins would not go aboard the dilapidated plane. The rest of the team joined them, voicing concerns over the vehicle's safety. Regarding the vocalist, Ronnie Van Zant, he said, "Hey, if the Lord wants you to die on this plane when it's your time, it's your time. Let's go, man, we've got a gig to do." 24 passengers, including the musicians and their team, reluctantly took their places on board and said they'd put up with this one last flight. But later on, they'd need to buy the band its own Learjet. However, less than 3 hours into the flight, new issues with the plane arose. As it turned out, the vehicle was burning fuel too fast, and the engine was emitting flames again. After seeing this through a porthole, drummer Artemis Pyle grew worried at first, but quickly reassured himself, thinking the pilots were probably just landing at the nearest airport to refuel. He was wrong, however, because, in the meantime, the pilots had realized they'd already missed the right opportunity for that. What they now needed was an emergency landing. The pilots figured they'd most likely land on a muddy field, so they told the passengers to buckle their seatbelts and get ready. However, in 10 minutes, the plane dived much lower than the clouds and flew into the trees. It smashed into the tall, hard trunks, shaking and throwing everyone inside in different directions. Pyle described it as 1,000 people with baseball bats beating on the fuselage. This torture went on for around 12 seconds. The trees cracked open the windshield and killed both pilots, even decapitating one of them. At around 6:52 p.m., the plane crashed a few kilometers from Gillsburg, Mississippi. Keyboardist Billy Powell opened his eyes and realized he was alive. He heard the voice of bass player Leon Wilkeson, who was begging, "Get me out of here." He, like a few other people, got crushed by seats and pieces of the wreckage. Guitarist Gary Rossington got pinned by the torn-off door of the plane. His entire body was hurting since he had fractures of both arms, legs, a wrist, and an ankle, as well as his pelvis bones. Wilkeson sustained a double fracture of the left leg and a complex double fracture of the left arm. 6 of his ribs were broken, and one of them had punctured the left lung. He also had severe face trauma. As if that wasn't enough, 15 of his teeth were punched out. Billy rushed to rescue the survivors from the debris, and Pyle ran to get help. The drummer could feel that his ribs were broken, but despite the pain, he continued wading through the mud and a stream. Soon, he found himself in the yard of a farmer named Johnny Moat. Moat saw a stranger enter his property, so he grabbed his gun and pointed it at Pyle. After seeing this, the exhausted drummer fell to his knees and uttered, "The plane crashed." Then something tore his arm apart. Later, he'd say Moat had shot him. Yet Pyle didn't judge the man who was just protecting his family. The rocker realized that at that moment, he looked like Charles Manson, all covered in blood, with his long hair and beard. However, Moat himself denied this detail of the story. One way or another, Pyle managed to call the rescuers and led them to the forest, but it was already too late to save some of the passengers. The crash had taken the lives of not just the pilots, but also assistant road manager Dean Kilpatrick, guitarist Steve Gaines, vocalist Cassie Gaines, and the notorious Ronnie Van Zant, the only one who was sure nothing bad would happen to the plane. Later, Pyle recalled that Ronnie had once told him he wasn't sure he'd live to be 30. Here, we need to remember about the album cover. Some people believe it was this photo that cursed the band. This is, of course, most likely untrue. Yet, eventually, it was replaced with a picture of the band against a black background. Never board a plane if you have any doubts about its safety, especially if you've already seen flames coming out of its engines. Tell me in the comments, what tragic events in the lives of your idols left you heartbroken? For example, as a devoted rock fan, I was beside myself for about a week when I learned that Travis Barker, drummer of the punk rock band Blink-182, almost died in a plane crash. A tragedy can strike anyone, anywhere, at any time, so be cautious and subscribe to my channel. Here, you'll find numerous videos where I share real-life examples to explain where danger may await you and how to avoid it.